Hi, I'm Chuck Dorsett for Weaver Leather Supply. We've got a beautiful thread rack. We need to add a little bit of color. Now this video is for us leather crafters, absolutely, but also for our woodworking cousins. And let me say, I absolutely respect your craft. But I've always heard basic leather dyes make beautiful wood stains. Let's find out. All right, so anything I use in this video, weaverleathersupply.com, or check below. We've got links there. Going to take you straight to the website. Also, if you want to know when our videos release, just click your notifications. You'll know exactly when these come out. So we're going to step over to our pattern table, talk about what we're doing, then let's see how this works. Let's start right here because this can be a little bit confusing. We're going with our standard leather dye. In fact, that's exactly what it says. Now, the Pro dye. This is my favorite dye, and I don't use anything else. I love this, and for a number of reasons. But I don't think this is going to work on our wood because it's got an oil-based dye stuff. We're going to try it, see what happens. But right here, I think these are going to be beautiful. So in our dye, I've got about 6 or 7 colors here. I'm going to pick 5 colors. We'll dye our boards, and then we'll try one with our Pro dye just again to see what happens. So I'm going to take all of this over to our main table, get us set up. Let's add some dye. I think I've got some pretty colors for us here. So we've got an Oxblood and a tan. I'm looking forward to seeing what both of those do. We've got a light brown, medium brown, and just for the heck of it, let's see what a red does. Now I've got 6 pieces of pine here, so let's try an oil dye, a Pro dye. It's the only dye I use, but it's an oil-based dye stuff. So I'm a little bit worried that some of that oil is going to stick on the face of the wood, but let's just see what happens. So I'm going to apply this with a dressing sponge, and I love these. It's a good quality sponge, but I like to cut these down, makes them go just a little bit further. We can always use a dauber, but these are typically better on smaller projects. Larger pieces or panels, it's hard to get the dye consistent with these, but they're great. Say if we just want a sample of a color. I keep these in my shop by the 100 pack. All right, so I'm going to take one of our dyes, pour it in our bin. Let's see what happens. Let's start with our Oxblood. This should be pretty, but what I am going to do, let's mark our blocks of wood just because things that should be obvious sometimes are not. So with our sponge, these can really hold a lot of liquid. I'm just going to add 1 coat to these, but let's get a little dye in our sponge and let's just apply as evenly as we can. Good. Okay, let's leave that right where it is. Set that aside. Now I'm going to do the same thing with the balance of the 5 colors. Our Oxblood came out to be a pretty solid red. So let's switch over to the cordovan, see what this does. And our last up, our Pro dye walnut. Well, that already looks like a pretty color. Now, dry time, I have no idea. On leather, about 2 hours, give or take. So what I'm going to do, over the next 3 or 4 hours, I'm going to check these about every 45 minutes, give or take. Then I'll be able to give us a solid dry time. We've got some beautiful colors here. I'm actually surprised. Now, I've given everything about 4 hours dry time, but in all honesty, by the time I got each piece dyed and then did some cleanup, the Oxblood, that felt dry. So I might say about 2 hours dry time, which is standard for leather. But it's an alcohol carrier. It's going to dry pretty quick. But also because of that, we do need a little ventilation. Now for our woodworkers, I don't have a lot of answers on more specific items. I just don't have the experience there. But I hope we can make a call from what we see here. So right there, the Oxblood, wipe the debris off that. Yeah, there we go. So our Oxblood is a good, rich red. That's beautiful. I think our tan, that might be my favorite. Now on our light brown, medium brown, we've got just a slight variation in the color. And the cordovan, very pretty, very rich color. Now, one thing I am surprised with, absolutely, Our Pro Dye actually came out beautifully. It's a gorgeous color, but there is none of that oil left on the surface. It wicked in and dried nicely. And a big point there in the Pro Dye, we've got a beautiful blue, green, red, mahogany. Now, if we want to back off on the color just a little bit, we've got what's called a dye reducer. It's not going to change the color of the dye. It's simply going to mean there's less dye in the mix. And one more thing, I haven't really done a cost comparison, say a stain yield cost over a dye. But to me, the dye just seems to be a little bit easier to deal with. And for us leather crafters, typically we've got that in stock. We've got some pretty colors here and more possibilities. That makes this decision a little bit more difficult. But for our woodworkers, I hope there's something in here that's going to help you out. Good luck with your projects.